The phone rang while Evelyn was ironing a plain blue dress she had planned to wear to her daughter's big day. She had taken in the seams herself, stitched a neat line along the hem, and pressed the collar until it lay flat and clean. The dress was simple but neat. It smelled faintly of lavender because she always slipped a sachet into the wardrobe. She answered with a smile in her voice. Lena. There was a pause, like someone closing a door to speak freely. Then Lena's voice came tight and careful. Mom, listen, I need to say this before things get messy. Evelyn's hand stilled over the ironing board. What's wrong? Don't come to the wedding, Lena said. No greeting, no softness. Please, you'll shame me. You're too poor, Mom. The guests are Ryan's family. This is a black tie event. It's not for you. The room felt suddenly small. The iron hissed on the fabric. Evelyn pulled it back before it burned a mark. Lena, she said softly, I bought a dress. It's modest, but it's nice. I won't be in the way. It's not about being in the way, Lena snapped, then lowered her voice. It's about image. Ryan's mother invited people from the company. Media might be there. I can't have anyone judging me because you look simple. Evelyn stared at the dress she had worked so hard to make perfect. Her throat tightened, but she kept her voice steady. Your mother looks simple, she said. Is that what you mean? There was a sharp little sigh. Please don't make this harder than it is. I'm under pressure. I don't want to argue. What will you tell people who ask where I am? Evelyn asked. I'll say you're unwell, Lena replied quickly. She had already rehearsed it. It's better for everyone. For a long second, there was only the soft tick of the kitchen clock. Evelyn pictured Lena as a little girl in a sunflower dress, clinging to her hand on the first day of school. She tasted the memory like salt. If that is what you want, I won't come, she said. Her voice surprised her, calm, almost gentle. I love you. The line stayed silent. Then Lena muttered, thanks for understanding, and hung up. Evelyn stood very still. The iron cooled beside her, the blue dress folded like a quiet apology. She put the iron away, smoothed the fabric one last time, and carried the dress back to the wardrobe. When she closed the door, the lavender scent drifted up, kind and useless. She made tea but did not drink it. She sat at the small kitchen table, the one where she used to help Lena with homework. While dinner simmered, the evening light came in at a low angle and fell across the photo frames on the wall. Lena, at her graduation. Lena, in her first apartment. Lena, beaming with a certificate in her hand. In every picture, Evelyn stood just off to the side, smiling like the sun was shining directly on her child. It had not always been like this. When her husband Michael died, Evelyn took 2 jobs, front desk at a clinic by day, alterations at a dry cleaner by night. She learned to measure without looking, to run a sewing machine in straight lines, even when her eyes stung. She skipped new shoes so Lena could go on school trips. She sold a necklace Michael had given her so Lena could have a prom dress she adored. She never said a word about the sacrifice because it felt natural, like breathing. Things began to change when Lena started working at the marketing firm. New friends, new language. We need to polish my brand, she would say, half joking. And Evelyn would laugh along. Then came Ryan. He was handsome, well-connected, always talking about numbers and seats at the table. He liked fine things and made Lena feel like fine things finally liked her back. Evelyn noticed her daughter's posts grew glossy. The captions grew colder. When the engagement was announced, Evelyn knitted a soft white shawl and thought she would add beads along the trim. The wedding planner sent group emails full of words like gala, platinum package, and curated guest experience. No one asked Evelyn's opinion about flowers or songs. She told herself it was normal. She had always chosen quiet over noise. She picked a neat card and wrote a small blessing in tidy script. She saved a little money each week for a thoughtful gift. Now she sat in the still kitchen and tried to swallow the words, "You'll shame me." They would not go down. She took the shawl out of a paper bag and held it up to the light. Her hands had made it, knot by knot. Her hands had made so many things. They did not look like shame. 8. Mrs. Clark from next door knocked to return a casserole dish. She took one look at Evelyn's face and set the dish down gently. "You've had news," she said, not asking. "Just wedding talk," Evelyn answered. She tried to smile. "Young people and their plans. Plans come and go," Mrs. Clark said. "Mothers stay." She squeezed Evelyn's arm and left it at that. When the house was quiet again, Evelyn opened the drawer under the phone and took out a small tin box. The lid stuck at one corner. She lifted it carefully. Inside were letters tied with a faded ribbon, a photograph of Michael laughing at a picnic, and a slim envelope marked in his handwriting. For Evelyn, keep safe. She had kept it safe for years, too many to count, because the contents were a private link between who she had been and who she had become. Paper can carry a life across time if you let it. She touched the envelope but did not open it. She knew every line inside by heart. The list of shares Michael left her in a company that had once been small and was no longer small. The name of the man who had promised to look after her interests without fuss. The phone number that had changed offices, but not owners. She had chosen a simple life because it made sense while Lena was growing, because goodness felt cleaner when it did not come with announcements. But goodness did not mean silence forever. Evelyn slid the envelope back and closed the tin. She was not angry. Anger would have been easier. What she felt was sharper than anger and cooler. The knowledge that love should not be a mask someone puts on only for photographs. Lena had traded warmth for shine and had not noticed it slipping away. You cannot forgive a thing until you admit it happened. She was not ready to forgive. She was ready to stand up. At 10, her phone buzzed. A message from Lena. Hope you understand. I'm overwhelmed. I'll send you photos after. Evelyn typed, I understand. I wish you joy. She deleted the last line she wanted to add. And I will always be your mother, because the words would sound like begging. She sent the message as it was and set the phone face down. She washed the cup she had not used and wiped the counter slow and careful. She put the blue dress back on a hanger and zipped the garment bag. Then she took a notebook from the shelf and opened it to a blank page. The first line she wrote was neat. Things I will do. She paused, listened to the neighbor's television through the wall, and wrote a second line. No arguing, no shouting, no scenes. She underlined it once. The third line she wrote without thinking, a name and a number she had not dialed in a very long time. She rested her finger on the page, then closed the notebook. She would not act out of pain. She would act out of love for the girl who had forgotten herself, and for the woman who had carried that girl up every hill. Evelyn turned off the lights and stood at the window. The street was quiet, the sky clear. She could see her reflection in the glass. A tidy woman with tired eyes and a straight back. People might call that simple. She found another word for it now. Solid. Before bed, she set the alarm for early. She knew exactly what she would do in the morning. She would take the tin from the drawer and make one call. She would not ask for a seat at the wedding. She would not beg to be seen. She would arrive on her own terms, with the truth standing beside her, and she would let her daughter see the mother she had always had. The next morning, Evelyn woke earlier than usual. The sky outside her window was pale and soft, but her mind was sharp, awake in a way it hadn't been in years. She brewed tea, sat at the table, and placed the small tin box in front of her. Her hands rested on the lid for a moment, steady but firm, before she opened it again. Inside, everything was as she remembered. The letters, the photo of Michael smiling under the sun, and the envelope with his neat handwriting. She unfolded the paper slowly, even though she knew every word. Michael had written it a few months before he passed away. If anything happens to me, these shares will keep you safe. Trust Charles Whitmore. He promised me he would always look after your part of the company. At the time, Evelyn hadn't thought much about it. She didn't know much about business, only that her husband had helped a close friend build a clothing company from scratch. She assumed the shares were just a kindness, maybe worth a little someday. But she remembered the day years later when Charles himself had visited, handing her the first dividend check. You don't need to worry, he had said. You're part of this family now. The checks had grown larger over time, but Evelyn never changed her life. She kept the money in accounts, paid her bills modestly, and put most of it aside. When Lena needed tuition, Evelyn covered it easily without saying where the money came from. To Lena, it looked like her mother worked herself to the bone for her. In a way, Evelyn had worked at jobs, but she also carried the silent weight of choice. She never used her wealth for herself because she believed simplicity kept her grounded. Now, hearing her daughter's words echo, "You'll shame me," she realized her silence had cost her something. Lena didn't just ignore her sacrifices. She saw her as a burden, someone to hide away. Evelyn picked up the phone. The number in Michael's letter had been updated over the years, but she had always kept track, just in case. She dialed carefully. Whitmore Group, a receptionist answered. "This is Evelyn Harper. I'd like to speak with Mr. Whitmore. He'll know me." There was a pause, and then the woman's tone shifted. "One moment, madam." A click, and then a familiar voice, older but still strong. "Evelyn, my word. It's been too long." Her throat tightened. "Charles," she hesitated, then steadied herself. "I need a favor." It's about my daughter's wedding. He didn't ask for details. Say no more. Tell me when and where. I'll take you there myself. Evelyn exhaled a small weightlifting sigh. Charles, I don't want to cause a scene. You won't, he said, his voice carrying the certainty of someone used to making decisions that shaped entire boardrooms. But you deserve respect. If your daughter can't see that yet, perhaps others will remind her. After the call, Evelyn sat in silence. She looked around her little kitchen, the plain cupboards, the worn chairs, the lace curtains she had sewn herself. To anyone else, it looked like the home of a woman who scraped by, but hidden in her bank accounts were enough figures to change a life. She thought about Lena. She remembered buying her daughter's first ballet shoes, even though money was tight. She remembered patching Lena's coat one winter so she wouldn't be cold. She remembered every tear Lena cried when her father died, and how Evelyn had promised, I'll always take care of you. Maybe Evelyn had taken care of her too well. Maybe she had hidden too much. Lena had grown up thinking appearances meant everything because Evelyn had made life seem effortless. She never let her daughter see the truth of the sacrifices or the power Evelyn quietly held. The next few days, Evelyn prepared herself. She visited a boutique, one of the many owned under Whitmore Group's umbrella. The manager, recognizing her name, rushed forward with respect. Madame Harper, we've been expecting you. Evelyn tried on a gown the color of deep midnight, the fabric falling smooth and elegant. She felt strange at first, out of place, but when she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman who had carried burdens, who had endured storms, who deserved to walk tall. She also visited the jeweler, the same one she hadn't stepped into since Michael bought her their wedding bands. The clerk bowed slightly when he saw her. It's been years. Madame, allow me to show you our best collection. She chose a necklace, not the flashiest, but graceful, with stones that caught the light like water. At night, she folded her blue dress, the one she had ironed with hope. She placed it back into the wardrobe and whispered, not this time. The night before the wedding, Lena sent another message. Mom, just to be clear, please don't come. It will only make things harder for me. I'll send photos after. Evelyn didn't reply. She placed her phone face down and set the gown on the hanger by her bed. In the quiet, she thought about what she was about to do. She wasn't going to the wedding for revenge. She wasn't going to embarrass her daughter. She was going to remind Lena of something she had forgotten. Dignity isn't about status. It's about truth. The morning of the wedding, a black car pulled up outside Evelyn's modest home. The chauffeur stepped out and opened the door. Inside, Charles Whitmore sat waiting, his silver hair neat, his presence commanding. He smiled warmly. Shall we go, Evelyn? For the first time in years, Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. She slipped into the car, her gown sweeping behind her, and as the door closed, she felt the weight of years of silence lifting. The city lights blurred past the window as they drove. Evelyn sat straight, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She wasn't nervous anymore. She was ready. By the time they arrived at the grand ballroom, the music inside was already playing. Guests laughed and sipped champagne, waiting for the bride and groom to appear. But before anyone else noticed, the doors opened. Evelyn stepped out of the car, Charles offering his arm. The cameras flashed, the ushers whispered, and people began to rise. The woman Lena had called Tapor was about to walk into the most important night of her daughter's life, and nothing would ever be the same again. The ballroom glowed with golden light. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, throwing diamonds of brightness across polished floors. Guests in black tie attire murmured and laughed, their voices blending with the music from a string quartet. The wedding had been planned to impress, and it showed. Every detail screamed wealth, power, and status. At the center of it all was Lena, radiant in her gown, holding Ryan's hand. She smiled at the flashes of cameras, at the guests who praised her beauty, at the whispers that traveled across tables. Tonight was supposed to be her triumph. Tonight she wanted to prove that she had finally stepped into the world of elegance she had always dreamed of. But she could not keep her eyes from the doors. Each time they opened for a late guest, her chest tightened. She had made it clear her mother was not to come. She prayed that Evelyn had listened. Ryan noticed her distraction and leaned in. Relax, he whispered. Everything looks perfect. Lena nodded quickly, forcing a smile. She wanted so badly to believe him. And then, just as the music swelled, the ballroom doors opened wide. A hush fell instantly. Heads turned, glasses paused mid-air. Even the musicians stumbled for a second before recovering. The entire room seemed to inhale at once. Evelyn Harper stood in the doorway. She wore a gown of midnight blue, the fabric shimmering under the chandelier light. A necklace rested on her collarbone, catching the glow and scattering it like stars. Her silver hair was styled neatly, her posture tall, her face calm, neither proud nor nervous, only dignified. Beside her, Charles Whitmore in his tailored suit offered his arm. The whispers began immediately. Is that her? That's Evelyn Harper with Charles Whitmore himself. Madam Harper, I've heard of her shares in Whitmore Group. And then, almost like a ripple moving through the crowd, people began to rise, chairs pushed back, skirts brushed against the floor. One by one, the guests stood, not for the bride, not for the groom, for Evelyn. Charles nodded at the crowd, but all eyes were on the woman at his side. The ushers bowed slightly, the photographers turned their lenses, and even the host of the evening hurried forward with a respectful smile. Welcome, Madam Harper. We are honored you could join us. Ryan's hand slipped from Lena's fingers. His mouth hung open. You're your mother, he stammered. Lena's face drained of color. She could not breathe. She had told everyone Evelyn was too sick to come. She had insisted her mother was unfit for such a glamorous event. And now, here she was, shining brighter than anyone else in the room. Evelyn walked slowly, each step measured. She did not rush, did not look left or right, but the crowd's eyes followed her. She was not trying to steal attention. She simply carried herself like someone who belonged, and the room responded to that truth. As she passed, guests whispered, "Greetings, good evening, Madame Whitmore. It's an honor, Madame Harper. Wonderful to finally meet you." The titles rolled like a wave, wrapping around Lena until her ears burned. Finally, Evelyn reached the front. She stopped, looked at her daughter, and for a moment, neither spoke. Evelyn's eyes were steady, filled not with anger, but with something sharper. Disappointment, strength, and love, all tangled together. Lena's lips trembled. "Mom," she whispered, too soft for anyone else to hear. The ceremony continued, but the air had changed. Guests who once fawned over Lena now turned their attention to Evelyn. Even Ryan's parents, who had looked down on Evelyn before, leaned forward with sudden interest. They whispered to each other, clearly shaken by this unexpected revelation. The photographers, who had been told to focus on the bride and groom, kept turning their cameras toward Evelyn. Each flash captured her calm smile, her graceful presence, her quiet power. For Lena, the night that was supposed to prove her worth became something else entirely. Every cheer, every clap, every respectful greeting was for her mother. Evelyn had not raised her voice, had not declared her wealth, had not needed to. The truth spoke for itself. When the ceremony ended, Evelyn did not rush to leave. She mingled politely, speaking with old friends from the company who approached her with warm smiles. "It's been too long," one said. "Your late husband would be proud." Lena stood frozen, clutching her bouquet tighter and tighter until her knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to ask why her mother had hidden this secret, but she could not in front of everyone, not while all eyes were on Evelyn. At one point, Ryan finally turned to Lena and whispered harshly, "You never told me your mother was connected to Whitmore Group. Do you know what this means?" Lena shook her head weakly. Her mind was a blur. All she knew was that the woman she had pushed aside, called poor, called shameful, was now the star of her wedding. The ballroom lights glittered, the music played on, but in Lena's chest, there was only a heavy, crushing silence. She had wanted a perfect wedding. Instead, she had given her mother the stage without even realizing it. And Evelyn, she simply smiled politely, never raising her voice, never making a scene. It was not revenge in the loud sense. It was something quieter, something deeper. Her presence alone was enough to turn the night upside down. For the first time in years, Lena saw her mother not as a burden, but as someone she barely knew. The night was not over. The questions were only beginning. The ballroom slowly emptied after the vows were exchanged. Guests gathered near the tables, sipping champagne, still buzzing about Evelyn's arrival. Some came to shake her hand, others, to tell her how much they respected her late husband, Michael. Everywhere she went, people treated her with quiet honor. Lena, meanwhile, sat stiff at the head table. Her bouquet lay forgotten. Her cheeks burned each time she heard her mother's name whispered with awe. This was supposed to be her night, the night she finally proved she belonged in the world of the wealthy and powerful. But now the spotlight had shifted. Ryan leaned close, his tone sharp but hushed. "Why didn't you tell me your mother was connected to Whitmore Group? Do you have any idea what this could have meant for us, for my business?" Lena blinked, stunned by his words. She had expected anger, maybe shame, but Ryan's eyes gleamed with greed, not embarrassment. He was calculating what her mother's presence could do for him. In that moment, Lena's stomach twisted. She stood, clutching her gown, and made her way across the room toward Evelyn. Guests parted instinctively, giving her space, but also watching, curious, expectant. The bride and her mother, finally face to face. "Mom," Lena said, her voice trembling. Evelyn turned slowly. Her expression was calm, not triumphant. She didn't look like a woman who came to ruin her daughter's night. She looked like a mother who had finally stopped hiding. Lena lowered her voice, desperate. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say you had all this?" Her eyes darted to Charles, who stood nearby, speaking to a group of businessmen. "The shares, the company, the money, all these years. Why did you let me think you were just poor?" Evelyn finished gently. "I didn't mean yes, you did," Evelyn said, her tone soft but firm. "And that is the problem." The words struck harder than a shout could have. Lena swallowed, her eyes filling with tears. She glanced at the guests who pretended not to listen, but leaned just close enough to catch every word. "You see, Lena," Evelyn continued, "I never told you about the shares because I didn't want your life to be built on money. I wanted you to know kindness, humility, the value of love. I thought if I kept things simple, you would see the things that matter most." Lena's throat tightened. But somewhere along the way," Evelyn said, her voice breaking slightly, "you decided appearances were worth more than your own mother." The silence around them grew heavy. Ryan stood at a distance, pretending to chat with his groomsmen, but his ears were sharp. Guests exchanged glances, their smiles fading. "I worked hard for you," Evelyn whispered. "I gave up things you'll never know, so you could stand here today in that dress. And yet you told me I would shame you." Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. "Mom, I didn't mean you meant every word," Evelyn said, still calm. "I heard it in your voice. You wanted a perfect night without me in it." Lena shook her head, reaching for her mother's hand. "I was wrong. I see that now. Please forgive me." Evelyn let her daughter hold her hand, but her face stayed unreadable. She didn't pull away, yet she didn't soften either. "Forgiveness is not the problem, Lena. Trust is. You broke it, and that will take time to rebuild." The crowd had fallen completely silent now. Even the music had dimmed. All eyes were on them. Evelyn gave her daughter's hand one last squeeze, then released it. "I won't make a scene," Evelyn said quietly. "This is your wedding. Enjoy it." She stepped back and took Charles's arm again. Together, they began to walk toward the exit. Guests murmured as she passed, some bowing their heads slightly, others whispering, "Graceful woman, dignity itself." Lena stood frozen, watching her mother leave. She had wanted her gone from the beginning, but not like this. Not with the entire room respecting the woman she had been so desperate to hide. Ryan appeared at her side, his voice low and urgent. "Do you understand what we've lost? If you'd just treated her better, think of the doors she could have opened for us." Lena turned to look at him, and for the first time, she saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't angry about her cruelty. He wasn't even embarrassed. He only cared about the opportunities Evelyn represented. The realization made her chest ache. Meanwhile, Evelyn stepped into the night air, the cool breeze brushing her face. The limo door opened, and she slid inside with Charles. She leaned back against the seat, closing her eyes for a moment. She hadn't shouted. She hadn't argued. She hadn't humiliated her daughter in front of everyone. She had simply shown up as who she truly was and let Lena face the truth on her own. The wedding would go on. The music would play again. The guests would dance and drink. But the memory of that moment, of Evelyn's entrance and Lena's pale face, would never leave the room. Inside the ballroom, Lena sat again at the head table, tears staining her makeup. She felt the weight of her own choices pressing down on her. Her mother had walked out with dignity, leaving Lena surrounded by whispers and regret. The perfect night she had dreamed of had turned into a lesson she would never forget. And Evelyn, she didn't need revenge in loud words or cruel acts. Her revenge was quiet, powerful, and unforgettable, simply showing her daughter the truth she had refused to see, the truth that the woman she had tried to hide was the one who had given her everything.